living in unprecedented times. Even Southern Baptist church members get a shot of alcohol when they come and leave a service. Now that I have your attention, I'm talking about hand sanitizer, okay? People will be listening to the podcast, driving down the road, running off the road. What kind of crazy church is that? I told you them people up there, they're nuts. Listen, guys, we're going to talk about our situation in just a moment, but we have to remember that we are baptized. Those of us that are baptized believers and followers of Christ, we don't have to fear, okay? We don't have to be afraid. I finished 27 years of teaching last year, and one of my fellow ag teachers that retired a few years ago, we had our FFA contest this week before we had to shut down school, and he told me, he said, you know, when you get to that point, he said, you realize that, the worst case scenario is you get paid to stay home. And when we think about our worst case scenario that we fear, that we try to, we cling to life in this country, we cling to life as humans. But when you're a baptized believer, when you're a follower of Christ, your worst case scenario is perfection. Your worst case scenario is eternity in heaven with Him. And so we don't have to be afraid. We don't have to fear like the rest of people who have no hope. I just want to take a moment before we dive into our message this morning, and how poignant that we had arrived at a place in our journey with John that we are in a place that really just kind of fit together. But I just want to take a moment and address the situation and talk about how Living Faith will respond and how I intend to lead. And I thank all of you guys for helping in that process. Also thank Josh for trading in his car so we could have those hand sanitizer pumps out there. And what are you guys doing with all the toilet paper, for crying out loud? Okay? If you don't have any, if you didn't get in on the rush, just let me know, because I'm thinking barbecue will trade pretty well for it. And so we're prepared to barter if needed. Okay? Folks, this is an evolving situation. We don't know everything that we need to know, but I do believe that it is important that we educate ourselves and that we remain calm and that we be a light to our community. All of us are learning something new every day. There's tons and tons of information that comes out, and we're also learning that what we thought we might have known yesterday may not necessarily be true for today, because it's evolving, and so we're learning many things. So for Living Faith, this is what I want you to know, is number one, our Wednesday night programs where we bring all of our kids, and that will not continue until school goes back into session, unless we, again, evaluate something different and something new. This format we felt like worked well, because you guys who want to come, and I appreciate all you guys coming, gives us an opportunity to come, and so we don't have to worry about, nobody was in your seat at 8:30 this morning, so you don't have to worry about that. This is a one-time deal. Everybody's here, and then you guys leave, and then this place will just be empty for a few days, and everything that's in here, it ain't going to make it, okay? So then you come back. So that is an option. Having Sunday school, we felt like moved us a lot around the building, created more social contact, and social distancing is one of the things that they're advising us to do. Another thing is, at this point, talked to a lot of medical health professionals about this. We don't have a confirmed case close to us, but we also don't know everybody who does have it. So that's one of those things that we're still learning about. Our Sunday morning services and what we're doing right now will be still on a week-to-week basis. We will consult. We'll do whatever we can. We appreciate our governor giving us a suggestion. We appreciate everybody. We seek everybody asking us, what we can do and what we want to do what's best for not only our community, but also for our spiritual health. And just not having any worship at all or any opportunity to worship, I don't feel like is a good plan. So we're going to do that. Now, with that being said, I want to welcome everybody who's watching on YouTube and on Facebook and all those things that are downloading today, maybe for the first time. That will continue. If this is just me and a camera, we will continue to provide a weekly worship service. We'll continue to provide a weekly message as long as I can stand and breathe. Okay, and if I go down, then we've got 5 other guys, and we get all the way down to Adam. Okay, and so all right. See, we got to laugh a little, right? Okay? We'll continue to provide a worship service. If you do not know how, okay? If you do not know how to access our messages online, let's learn, okay? This is an opportunity for us to learn about new things. This is not an accident. This is not something that God caught him off guard. This is not something that is a surprise to him. So when he gives us an opportunity, then we should take that, okay? So if you don't know how to do that, there's a variety of ways. You can log on to our church website. and you can access Facebook and you can access YouTube there. We have a YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and search Living Faith Baptist Church, it'll come up. Actually, a few of them will. Look for the black and look for the logo. Okay, that's where you click to find it. Everything we've ever done has been there. And so you can just knock yourself out, okay? It'll be there. We are today planning, and this will continue as long as we're in this format, to get that uploaded within an hour of when we finish this morning, and then we're going to post links on our Facebook page so it will be available to you. So as the situation evolves and you don't feel comfortable being here, by all means don't come, okay? I don't want you coming afraid, okay? And so just stay home and watch and just enjoy and be a part of that. So we're going to make that available to you. We also are going to, we've been doing this for a long time, but we also have online giving. If you are still able to work and you're still able to do, and God's being faithful to you, then you need to be faithful to our church and continue to help us to be able to keep the doors open, keep things going, and keep things paid and taken care of, okay? So if you've never participated in that, some of you don't want to participate in that because you know there's a little small percentage charge that goes with that service, and so that's fine. Maybe for a short season, if that works for you, that's okay. Okay? And so if you need help with that, let's help each other. We'll help you with being able to participate in our online services and our online giving. All of those things we will just evaluate from week to week. And just know that, as I said, it's okay to laugh, okay? It's okay to laugh. It's okay to have fun. I mean, you guys are, there's so many things that are out there and so many things that we're reading. But it's important for Christians, as Steve said, and I think that's so important, to not be afraid, okay? We do not need to be afraid in this time. This is not a time for us to fear. It's not a time for us to be afraid. We're reading, we're watching, we're consulting. I can't tell you how many phone calls, text messages, how many things I've read, how many people I've contacted to help us in making the most informed decision that we can concerning our response to this. And so I just want to kind of wrap this time up by sharing with you some of what I have learned which has brought us to where we are. Many of you have read statistics about the infection rate that we're dealing with this virus. You've also read statistics about the death rate. And I hear lots of different people say, well, that's not as high as the flu, or we don't really know, or what that is. But let me just help you to understand. Those low numbers or a low percentage or whatever, or it doesn't really affect my age category. And I'm very thankful that this really is not affecting children. That's a blessing. But regardless of a low percentage or a low number, when that percentage goes away and all of a sudden it's the name of a mom, or it's the name of your dad, or it's the name of your grandparents, then at that point, if it's your family, you don't care about the percentages anymore, okay? You no longer care about the low percentage, or because now it's you. And so that's something that we need to remember. This is what I have learned from folks that are advising me from our healthcare providers, okay? Folks that are our members here and then others. Just because we now have this virus, just because we have this COVID-19, doesn't mean the other healthcare issues of our land take a break, okay? It doesn't mean that they stop. We still have flu, we still have allergies, we still have heart conditions, and I could go on and on and on, okay? Everybody that had everything that they ever had still has it, okay? You all may not know, in January, Ohio County Hospital was overwhelmed with flu and pneumonia, okay? Every bed was full. The entire hospital was full with flu and pneumonia outbreak, okay? I had the flu in January, okay? People are still getting diagnosed with the flu. And so what the healthcare providers are telling me is that in that moment, we already have our beds full. We don't have the capacity for another problem. And so when we add another problem on top of that, then it becomes a real big deal, okay? And so 20,000 people in Ohio County going about their business, but 200 people or whatever it might be at Ohio County Hospital is a huge problem. So we're concerned about overwhelming our healthcare system. That's why we're going to extreme measures to limit human contact and to try to help this down. Healthcare professionals in those facilities are vaccinated for the flu. Most of them don't contract it from their patients when they're giving care. That is not the case that we find with this virus. Okay? In the healthcare facility in Washington State, over half of those healthcare workers were infected while they were caring before they realized what was going on and how to deal with that. Jimmy Duke, who runs our local ambulance service, said we have to be careful because there's not very many of those ambulance drivers and EMT workers and paramedics and those guys that we have. We can't afford for them to go down because somebody's going to have a heart attack. I don't know who that's going to be, and they're going to call 911, and they need somebody to come and help them. And so if we overwhelm our healthcare system, it doesn't take a lot to do those things. And so what we're trying to do is build ourselves time so that we can prepare for those things. Okay? There are ways that we can do that, and there are things that we can do, and there are plans that can be put in place, but it takes time to get those done. This is a novel strain virus. It means it's new, and it's also a smart virus. We know that. It's adaptable. It already has adapted. We don't know what it's going to do from here. And so we just don't need to have sick doctors that are caring and trying to care for sick patients. And we don't want to strain our already strained healthcare system. So that brings us to where we are. Folks, this can be confusing. These can be difficult times, but I believe that the church can rise to the occasion to be what it is supposed to be. I believe that the church can rise to the occasion to be a light in a dark and troubled time, in a dark and troubled world. You see, many of you are still thinking about your one and your witnessing and your calling or your inviting. And so when something like this happens, this could be a barrier that you run into. Well, if you love God and you're talking about Him and He's so good, then how can something so terrible like this happen in the world? And that becomes a real push. And other people may have been in church, and we talk about the unchurched and the de-churched and those who have left church, and maybe they were there, and all of a sudden a family member got cancer or something happened. And now they point to this situation and go, why? How can such a good God exist and allow such problems in the world? And so that's a valid question, and it's one that we've wrestled for forever. And it's a very common reaction in non-believers. It's a very common reaction to get in a place to ask, how can a good God allow something so terrible to happen in the world? If God is so good, then how can such evil exist? That's the question. It's what rolls over in their mind. Why would a good God allow bad things to happen? Here's the thing. When we ask this question, we're always focused on the bad out there. Okay? We're always focused on the bad in the world. We're always focused on the things that are going on out there. So let me ask you this. Have you ever done anything bad? Yes, you have. Okay? Because we're all sinners. All right? Have you ever thought about something really bad? Have you ever thought about doing something really bad, and what really kept you from doing it was you didn't want to go to prison? Go ahead, it's funny. All right? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you know. You've had those thoughts. You know, you get angry and I don't want to go to jail. Okay? And so thank God for laws, right? Now, so you've been there. I know you have, because I have. All right? I have. So now, ask the same question. How can a God be so good and allow such evil in me? Why doesn't He do something about me? Oh, we don't like to ask that question, do we? We want to turn that one around. We want to focus on the bad out there. Why would a good God allow such terrible things out there if He's so good? But when we start turning it back around and say, well, what about the evil in me? What about the evil in me? And then we turn it around and we don't like the question. So if John were here, the gospel writer John, if he were here, this is what he would tell us. I was there and I saw God. I saw Him in the flesh. And I saw Him exist alongside evil. I watched Him exist alongside evil people. People with evil thoughts and evil intentions and evil desires. So evil to the point that they murdered Him. I saw Him exist beside them. And so He gave us a recorded account. He gave us an account that we could sit down, and as we've started each week, we go back to John chapter 20 and verses 30 and 31 that tells us that John said Jesus performed many other signs in the prayer, but these things, I'm telling you, I was there, I saw it, I watched him exist alongside evil. I watched him do these things. I watched this happen. And so I've recorded these things so that you might believe. That you might believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God. And that by believing, you can have life in his name. And John would tell us that I saw a good God and I saw evil exist side by side. The story we look at today, we're going to look at the first half in John chapter 11 in verse 1. And we've been here many times before, but maybe not in this context. Because have you ever wondered what made Lazarus sick? I asked that question this week. Because a man named Lazarus was sick. We don't know what he had. We don't know what killed him. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha, and this was the Mary that poured the perfume. And John is putting in context who this person is. And so the sisters sent word to Jesus because he was sick. And as he went there, this is what the servant said in verse 3. The sisters sent word to Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. Wouldn't you like to be such a close friend of Jesus that they don't even have to use your name? Okay? But John is trying to hammer home a point. Okay? The reason he didn't say that he just came and asked him, he's trying to hammer home a point because of what Jesus does in this situation. And for us in this moment, this is a sign that is about to happen, and we're gonna look at the sign next week. But this is what's happening, because he comes and tells Jesus, Lord, the one you love is sick. And so we've tracked Jesus. He goes from Jerusalem and he goes back up to Galilee. And in this situation, he's just a little bit outside of Jerusalem. He's not too far away. But it's still about a day's journey, maybe a day and a half walk from where Lazarus is to where Jesus is. And so when we get to the end of the story, we actually realize that even before the messenger got there, Lazarus had already died. But this is what Jesus says about this sickness. Verse 4, when he heard this, Jesus said, this sickness will not end in death. This sickness will not end in death. As a matter of fact, he goes on. What is it? The sickness. Whatever killed him. We don't know what it was. It is for God's glory. So wait a minute, time out. So, the sickness, the evil, the whatever this was that killed Lazarus, God is going to use it, meaning that he allowed it. Yeah, he knows. He already knew. This sickness will not end in death. It is for God's glory, so that God's Son may be glorified through it. So what you mean? Whatever this is, this sickness that is naturally occurring. Now Jesus is saying, "Look, you gotta understand. I'm sovereign over it all. Okay." Whatever this is that's occurring in nature, whatever has happened to Lazarus, I understand that. Okay. I already know. I already know what it is. There's nothing that surprises God. Okay? This occasion and this place that we're living in these times is not a surprise to God, but God can use it for his glory, and his Son can be glorified through it. You say, that's hard to get, isn't it? That's hard. That's a little bit hard pill to swallow. Because listen, I don't think Lazarus just died easy. Death is hard. Death is hard. His sisters had to watch him die. That's not easy. Some of you all have been through that. That's not an easy time, is it? No, it's not an easy time. It's as a matter of fact, some people that are standing around watching people watch somebody who's going through something like that. You know, finally somebody said, "I'll just walk to Jesus and tell him. I would just rather be walking to him than watching this." Human suffering. I mean, you say, wait a minute. You mean he would He would allow this? Yes, he would. Yes, he would. Sickness for the glory of God. And it gets a little uncomfortable. It gets a little uncomfortable. And as a matter of fact, it gets so uncomfortable that John writes in verse 5, he says, I know you're a little confused in reading this, but you need to know, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. You need to know that. You need to know that. John's writing, he says, we need to understand that just because these things happen doesn't mean that God doesn't love us. I saw God exist in the midst of evil. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't love us. He says God, he loved him. Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. And he also puts that statement in there because of what he does next. And folks, there's a lot of people today in our own country that are hiding in their homes, looking out their window, and they don't believe it either. You getting me? They're hiding in their homes and they're looking out the window and they don't get it either. They don't understand what's happening. And we may not know and understand what's happening, but what we know, what we have, is that Jesus still loves us. That God still loves us regardless of what's naturally occurring in our environment. He still loves us. And we can be a source of hope. What Jesus does next is for the benefit of not just those seated there, but for us too. So when he heard that Lazarus was sick, he stayed where he was for 2 more days. And again, the statement, he really did love them. He really did love Mary. He really did love Martha. And he really did love Lazarus. But he stayed where he was for 2 more days. Why didn't he move? Why didn't he do what we expected him to do? Why didn't he do what we thought he would do? Why didn't he just make the journey? Why didn't he do one of those things? No, he isn't. Why didn't he demonstrate that for us? So after 2 days, he said to his disciples, "Let us go back to Judea." Oh, they don't want to go. Okay? But you see it right there, right? But Rabbi, a short while ago, the Jews there tried to stone you. And see, the problem with being stoned, okay, is people who throw stones are not always accurate. And so if you're following and hanging out with people who are being stoned, you get hit too, okay? And so it's like, hey, Jesus, a short while ago, the Jews there tried to stone you, and yet we're going to go back. They didn't want to go. And then Jesus answers, he does what he always does. It's so great. Are there not 12 hours of daylight? What? We're talking about Lazarus. We're talking about going back to Judea, and now you're talking about photo periods, and what are you doing, man? Are there not 12 hours of daylight, he says? Anyone who walks in the daytime will not stumble, for they see by this world's light. And then he goes on. It is when a person walks at night that they stumble, for they have no light. You see, what he's saying here is, guys, you have a unique opportunity here. You are standing in the presence of the light of the world. You don't really get it yet, but you need to understand. This is a unique opportunity. You are standing in the presence of the light of the world. There's a time coming when I won't be here. You will never see more clearly than you will right now. And so I know you don't want to go. I know you're afraid. I know there's fear. I know you're afraid to do things. But listen, if you stay here in fear, you're going to miss something really big. You're going to miss something really big. And you don't want to miss it. Trust me. I know what I'm going to do. He already knew what he was going to do. He's like, look, one day I won't be here. But right now I'm here. You're in the presence of the light of the world. And you don't want to miss this. You don't want to miss this. You don't want to stay here and be afraid. Because then you're going to stumble around in darkness. Apart from the author of life, you will never understand life. And folks, that's where your one may be. That's where so many people are. They're apart from the author of life, and so none of this makes any sense. None of it makes any sense. You try to put together all the pieces, and it's like it all winds up with nothing. It all winds up in just a mess, and nobody can make any sense of it at all. Jesus is saying to his disciples, you need to follow me. You need to follow me. Don't miss this. Don't miss this. And then he says, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I'm going to go there to wake him up. You ever give medical advice to God? They try to give some medical advice to God here, okay? Lord, if he's sleeping, he'll get better. Let him sleep, okay? I mean, that's what they say, right? Plenty of fluids, plenty of rest, right? I mean, come on, plenty of fluids, plenty of rest. He's asleep. Let him sleep. Let him rest. He'll get better. Oh, poor guys. Jesus had been speaking of his death, but they didn't get it. So he just gets plain with them. And in verse 14 he says, Lazarus is dead. Lazarus is dead. And now this is one of the things that you think, if you were going to make this story up, John, if you were going to make this up, you sure wouldn't want to include this. Because this next statement, you may begin to think, how in the world could he even say it? How in the world could he even say it? Lazarus is dead. And for your sake, and this is where it's for me, and this is where it's for you, for my sake, and for your sake, and for people for the next thousands of years' sake, I am glad I wasn't there. You mean you allowed them to witness? You allowed Lazarus to suffer? You allowed him to get sick, go through an illness to the point of death? And now you're standing here and saying that you're glad that you weren't there to stop it? Yeah, I am. That's hard. That's hard. That's really hard. It's so hard that some people have a hard time understanding it. It's so harsh. It's so tough. And when we realize that it's Mary, Martha, and Lazarus at the center of it all, makes it even harder because he loved them. They were his close friends. These were not acquaintances. These were not somebody that he hadn't met. These people took care of Jesus' physical needs. They let him live in their house. They provided him food. They supported his ministry financially. These people were his friends. But yet they experienced an illness. And they experienced the suffering with the illness to the point of death. And now he says, I'm glad I was not there. But this is why I say it's for me and why it's for you. The reason why he's glad that he wasn't there. So that you may believe. So that you may believe. So that you may believe. John said, I was there. I heard him say it. And I saw what happened next. for the sake of everyone in the future that has lost somebody they love. He's glad that he wasn't there. The light of the world had come to shed light on the world of darkness. And this was that moment when Jesus says, it's time. It is time to set in motion what I've come to do. It is time to set in motion what I have come to do, that the world will not be able to look at this and deny it. They're going to have to do something. You see, the Pharisees, as we studied last week, were practicing willful blindness. When Jesus gave sight to the blind man, they just couldn't and they didn't want to believe. And John said that he was glad that he wasn't there. Because what comes next is so that we might believe. How do I reconcile a good God and evil in the world? How do I reconcile a good God and evil in the world? I am glad I was not there so that you might believe. Next week, we're going to take the journey back to Lazarus. But today, in light of our current situation, I close with this question. How can you be the light? How can you be the light in a dark situation? Instead of looking at the situation that we're in, this terrible situation that has no good in it, I challenge you to stop for a moment and ask, what can I do to be a light? Maybe take somebody some groceries. Maybe read a book. Maybe teach someone how to access the internet. I know many of you all will continue to work and jobs continue as normal. But there's a lot of folks, and especially our young people, that are going to have a little time on their hands. You have to learn to practice some time management. For some of you, March Madness has become March Sadness. Okay? ESPN is reporting on everything that's not happening. Let me challenge you. Don't spend all of this time. If you're being given extra time, don't spend it all on Xbox and Netflix. Okay? You can watch a little TV, that's fine. But don't just pour into yourself. Take an opportunity to pour into others. Find a way. Find a way. People are holding up in fear, and we have the light source. I challenge you to see it as an opportunity from God to look at life differently. I sat down with a group of ag teachers on Friday for a meeting, and we didn't go and meet together. We sat down and used Microsoft Teams, and we met online. And we were in all different parts of the state while we were discussing what we were discussing. I'm on the FFA Camp Advisory Council, but we also took a moment and said, maybe, just maybe, this is an opportunity just to slow down. Snow days used to be that until we got salt brine and salt trucks and we clean roads faster and we get back to work as fast as we can. And so maybe God is just saying, take a breath. He could have healed this. He could have cured it. He could have never allowed it to happen, but instead it's happening. And so maybe he's saying, I'm glad I didn't stop it so that my glory may be made manifest and my light may be seen. We have to ask ourselves that question because we have the light. We have the hope. See this as an opportunity from God to look at life differently. If you get a chance, if you're given a chance, slow down and share with somebody. We don't have to live in fear. We do not live afraid. God did not give us that spirit. God's light can exist in an evil world. And folks, that light shines in you. That light shines in you. That the source of it is your relationship with Christ, because when you ask Him into your heart, the Holy Spirit lives within you. And so you become a source of light for a dark world. God's light can exist in an evil world, and that light lives in you. So what's next? What's next? Maybe you came today looking for hope. And maybe you're here today because you need to be hope for someone. Well, if you're here today and you've never said yes to the relationship that God offers, I have very good news. Okay? There may be some things canceled, but salvation is not one of them. Okay? Salvation is not one of them. It is free and open to all, and it is available simply with a request, a prayer of repentance and an asking of God to come into my heart and save me, and it happens just that way. It happens just that way. So if that's you, I invite you. I invite you to ask Him in. Maybe you're here just saying, well, I just felt like I needed to come, and I don't know what to do. Maybe you just need to pray for guidance. Maybe you need to pray that God would shine a light on a neighbor, that he would illuminate a need in your neighborhood, that He would illuminate somebody that's so afraid to get out of their house, and maybe they don't have food, they don't have anything. Reach out to them. Check on your neighbors. Check on our elderly population. Okay? Call them. Okay? This thing, we don't know how it transitions, but I can promise you this: it doesn't go through phone lines, and it won't transmit through text messages. Okay? Those are safe. Okay? And you can communicate that way. So reach out. Call someone. Text them. Write somebody a letter. Okay? Wow. Okay? Do something. But communicate with people. Communicate with people, and don't isolate ourselves from communication. We are designed to fellowship together, and that has to continue somehow, okay? So learn how. If your Sunday school class wants to meet, learn how to meet online or meet somewhere. Get a big circle, build a fire, whatever, okay? But we can continue on. The church will survive, all right? Until Jesus returns and calls us home, we will survive. And we need to realize that this could be a really important opportunity to reach someone and be a light in a dark world. Let me pray for you.